All right, good morning, everybody. This is a new episode of Web's Webinar Wednesday, and today it's all about the HubSpot user group together with Martijn Verschoor, and we are going to talk about Inbound 2020. But before I explain today's topic, my name is Thijs van Rosmalen. I am an account executive at Webs. We are an HubSpot agency in the Netherlands, Eindhoven and Amsterdam based. And I work closely with Martijn. He's located in Dublin. And yeah, we are helping customers on HubSpot and to optimize this. And we are very excited of today's subject, today's topic. Um, if you're new to Web's Webinar Wednesday, some easy rules. As you notice, you're all unmute. So if you want to share anything, please use the chat. We are here to cover all your questions and answer, give all the answers you need for today. So make sure you get the full value of this upcoming hour. Yes, Inbound 2020, it was totally different than last year. I remember that we were with a lot of people in Boston in 2019 because Inbound is the annual conference for all marketing, sales, and customer success professionals, hosted by HubSpot with keynote speakers like Michelle Obama and a lot of breakout sessions for marketing, sales, and customer success professionals. So every year it's an amazing event where you can get a lot of information about those expertise. But today, this year, it was different. It was online this time. But today we are going to recap Inbound 2020, and in particular, we will focus on one of the biggest announcements, because one of the biggest announcements made last week is the sales enterprise part of the HubSpot hub. The sales enterprise enables us, starting from today, that we have still the easiness we know from HubSpot, but now also the full power as we know from other enterprise tools. So it literally gives us the full benefits of a very strong and powerful tool for our sales process and sales automation, but still on a daily basis with the ease of use as we know HubSpot is strong. So today, Martijn is here to join us. He is an executive at HubSpot, as I already said, and he's using this on a day-to-day basis. So let's talk about some best practices on how to use the new strong Sales Hub Enterprise for your business. Martijn, welcome. Good morning to you.
Morning, Thijs. Thanks for the introduction and the enthusiasm about Inbound and the Sales Hub Enterprise features that we announced.
Yes, I was a little bit disappointed that we couldn't meet in Boston this year, but yeah, we speak almost weekly via Zoom,
Exactly.
so good to have you here.
Good. I'm happy to be here. So let's kick things off then, and I'll jump right into my my presentation for you guys. Can I just start sharing my screen, Thijs? Do I have the rights?
Yes, yeah, you can go.
Perfect.
I will make sure that we can see it. Yeah, we can
Perfect.
see your screen. Everything
Great.
works.
Perfect. All right. So clearly, I work for HubSpot. Thijs has mentioned that. So let's get into the presentation. It's Webinar Wednesday, but I've sort of titled this presentation or this webinar as Power to the Salespeople. And the reason for that is that over the last couple of years, it's become more of a priority on the side of HubSpot to double down and invest, or reinvest, I should say, more accurately, in the functionalities on the CRM sales side. And hopefully today I can give you a good impression of what's available from last week already, and how you as HubSpot users, I know most of you are already familiar with the platform or using it in some way, shape, or form, how to maximize the usage and the potential that's available to you today. So a little bit about me. Thijs has already introduced me, but just briefly, I started out in 2017 on the sales floor as an inbound sales coordinator. So that was really just answering the chats on the website, picking up the phone when people called. So when they dialed the US phone line, at least 1-800 HubSpot, I would be one of the people, 7 people at the time around the world, that would pick up the phone and answer your questions, and then hopefully put you through if I thought you were qualified well enough. A good learning experience. Moved into business development after doing that for about 7 months, 8 months. Did that for some time and then transitioned into my current role as an account exec in 2018. So been doing this for a little bit over 2.5 years now. So what's on the agenda today? I've split this presentation or this webinar more or less into 3 pieces, also because it's crucial to start out with the fundamentals or the basics. So I want to actually start off by giving you a high-level overview of the reasoning or the theoretical aspect of why we decided to double down on the sales side of things, understand exactly what it is that we're sort of competing against, but also what the value add is for our end users. After that, I want to make sure that you understand what some of my personal, but actually everybody's favorite functionalities are, what you could do with them, what it means for your business, but then also how, on the end of the presentation, how you can actually apply them practically and what the value add and the gains of this would be. Now, one thing that I want to make sure is clear for everybody is that if you have any questions, feel free to submit them at any time in the chat. Either Thijs or someone else on the side of Webs will get back to you, but we do actually have a few moments during the presentation where we can take a break, we can hopefully catch our breath, and then also answer any questions that you guys might have. So let's actually start off with one of the quotes of Inbound 2020. And that is that today's most disruptive companies are winning on customer experience and that CRM is at the center of it all. Now, this isn't necessarily anything new or revolutionary. This is something that has actually been well known or documented for the last couple of years. But we found out that with the advent or with the rise of this global pandemic, with Corona or COVID-19, and everybody being remote, that there has been an increased pressure put on the systems and the tools that companies are using in order to maximize and leverage customer experience in order to make sure that they are satisfied with the products and services, but also increase customer retention and increase the lifetime value. Now, this is something that we try to leverage and that we've been trying to explain to people, at least for the last 3.5 years that I've been at HubSpot. So what is a CRM? Now, a CRM, of course, is a customer relationship manager, a management tool, but historically CRMs, because they've been around since the end of the 1980s even, which surprised me, the first CRM was launched in 1986, the CRMs at that time are really dinosaurs by today's context, and they weren't constructed or built with the intention of being sold to the end users. Who were they actually being made for? Well, of course, they're being made for the decision makers on the sides of the companies. So the CEOs, the CFOs, the COOs, but they're also made for the IT departments because they have technical requirements. And based on those functionalities and desires, they had to come up with a slew of functionalities and tools and possibilities. They're also made for the finance team. Finance had to approve them because it costs quite a bit of money to implement a CRM, let's be honest. Accounting also got involved within the decision-making process. They also had their own opinions about what they should be able to do within the solution. Customer support did the same thing, customer success even. And even in some cases, the shipping departments for companies that sold or shipped products had to be involved in the process because they wanted to centralize all that information. But when you look at all this and you know what a CRM should or could do, what are the 2 teams that you're missing? And it's a pretty clear omission: sales and marketing. Those are the 2 departments that essentially breathe life into the CRM as we know it, but that historically were never involved or included within the evaluation process. And that led to a situation like this. So this is what we call on the side of HubSpot Frankenstein CRM, or in some cases a Frankenspot. Now, what we see here is a clear example of a business, and there are numerous businesses, global organizations around the world that use these types of setups, where historically they started off with a very old, very robust CRM at the time that they acquired it. And as time went on and the needs and the demands of the end user started to grow and evolve over time, they decided to add and configure and batch on all types of other platforms and solutions to try and keep it relevant and centralized. So you see in this case that they have a CRM, that they added some prospecting tools. They added the reporting functionalities for the ops and IT teams. And on top of that, they thought, okay, we need some automation to make it easier and friendlier to use. And then they added some CPQ functionalities in order to configure pricing, to configure quotes, and send it out. And then they started pumping it full of data. But what they realized at the end of the day is that you end up spending way too much money on add-ons, on integrations, on supporting teams that try to make it all up, to keep it all up and running. and not so much investing time and doubling down on the actual practical uses of the CRM. Now that's where HubSpot comes in. And we've actually figured out that there are 3 major hurdles or obstacles that our customers and prospects have been sharing with us for the last couple of years. The first one is the implementation. 1 in 3 of all CRM implementations fail historically, and that can be for numerous amounts or different amount of reasons. I'm not going to get into those today, but 1 in 3 is quite a significant number when you consider how many companies are actually moving to a CRM platform nowadays. The second aspect is the adoption of the platform once it's been implemented. More than 50% of sales leaders say that their CRM is hard to use. Think of the likes of your past experiences with Salesforce. Fantastic tool. It can do literally anything and everything. But do you actually like using Salesforce? Do you actually know how to use it successfully? And the last one is the strength of the platform. 47 of sales leaders don't believe that the current CRM is powerful enough to help them grow, not now, but over the next 3 years. Think back to the beginning of this year. Nobody expected we would be in the situation we are in now, so that number could be skewed even further now. This is what Brian Halligan, our CEO, said as well at the Inbound press conference and at the Inbound Spotlight this year, that in 2020, you no longer have to choose between a powerful and easy to use platform. These things should be almost self-evident when you decide to make use of a new platform or solution to help drive the business. But unfortunately, the vast majority of companies out there have grown into a position or a situation where that simply isn't the case. So what do we do on the side of HubSpot? Now you all, or the majority of you present today as HubSpot users, know all about the HubSpot flywheel, the HubSpot growth platform. And again, we've sort of doubled down and invested in this in order to maximize the potential of not just the platform, but also the data and your usage as an end user. You're able to leverage not only the insights of a singular team, but all the different essential teams across the board that are consistently maintaining a relationship or building or crafting a hand-tailored experience for the users or the contacts that you're adding and driving into the CRM platform. And when you think about it, I don't know how many of you guys have been around long enough in the internet and in the computer space to remember this image, but it harkens back to the age-old debate between a PC and a Mac, where a PC on the left-hand side could do literally everything and anything, but it starts to get all bloated and swollen and slow and sluggish to move. Whereas on the right-hand side, you have a Mac with all handcrafted built-in functionalities that pales in comparison in terms of the end usage and the applicability of the platform compared to that of a PC. I don't know if this rings any bells to you, but for me personally, it was sort of a blast from the past when someone made this analogy a couple of months ago to me. Now, of course, we've all, for those present today at least, come into contact with similar experiences, either internally at companies that we've worked at, even at the side of HubSpot. I'll be completely transparent in that department, that sometimes our systems weren't operating the way they should, but we realized that there was a better and more practical way to go about things. I'm just curious if anybody has any experiences themselves that they'd like to share, or if this rings true for anybody.
So in the chat, if you want to share any experiences on, yeah, how this works for you in the past, or did you recognize one of these? I know that once I worked at a company that we had that suit with Frankenstein was wearing all connected differently, and at one case there was a very experienced sales guy was working on a big deal, but the website was not connected, so he was working in his own process in his own system, and in the meantime people from the company where he was trying to get the deal from were looking at the website, they were downloading content and all those kind of things, and it was not connected. So he lost like great insights for his deal perspective instead of yeah, combining that in one record. It was like on two islands, for example. Yeah, that was not very
Yeah.
successful for his deal progress.
No, exactly. In the interest of time as well, I mean, I don't want to put anybody on that's present today on the spot, but if you guys can think of anything or want to share any of your experiences, feel free to submit them. We can circle back around to it towards the end. I know myself that I've come into contact with quite a few companies that are even to this day making use of a setup like that, where it isn't self-evident internally to be able to streamline and process everything more accurately. But let's continue, and feel free to share and include anything in the chat that we can get back to towards the end. So as Thijs mentioned, we announced a whole slew of new functionalities and features and upgrades even to our existing platforms, but the most important one is doubling down on our Sales Enterprise Hub. And the motto for the Sales Enterprise Hub moving forward is powerful or easy to use, pick two. Now, the first thing that I want to bring to you guys' attention, and I'm sure that some of you might have heard about this already or have received an email or notification about this, is actually the biggest update to the HubSpot platform since we actually delved into the CRM space or even the marketing space in general. And that's the addition of custom objects. Now, what this practically means for you as an end user is that you finally have the ability to completely tailor or customize the usage of HubSpot for your particular business purposes. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but a very practical example, just to use the case of Webs, for example. Webs as a HubSpot partner doesn't just have the ability to resell our licenses and make sure that it's implemented correctly to the end user, but they also have their own expertise, their own services, their professional services that complement the usage of HubSpot, like building a website, for example, like keeping the marketing strategy or the marketing side of things up and running. These were all parts of the business that up until about a couple of weeks ago were incapable or almost impossible to track or identify or even distinguish within the solution. But now they can configure the platform and also associate custom objects to the appropriate deals, companies, and contacts within a solution. I can answer more questions about this later, but it's very hard to emphasize that this cannot be overstated as being a huge update to HubSpot as a platform. Now, another one specifically on the sales side that has made a big impact on the usage of our platform and the adoption of the functionalities are the CPQ tools, or more specifically, the configure price quote functionalities within HubSpot. What this essentially means is that you're able to generate a quote, an offer within the platform based off of information and data that you're centralizing within the deals of the solution, and being able to convey a clear message adhering to the presentation, the look and feel of your own business to the end user in order to close that deal. Up until about a month ago, it was nigh on impossible to do this successfully. We had some basic functionalities, but the majority of people didn't like the experience of doing this within HubSpot, so would rather opt into using another solution like PandaDoc, DocuSign, you name it, to be able to round this crucial step in the process off on a different platform, which would mean that they would be forced outside of HubSpot. Another great improvement or increase in functionalities on the sales side are the analytics side of HubSpot. Now, there are numerous different bumps up into more advanced reporting and analytics. One of them is the ability to make even stronger reports and dashboards that are even more easily customizable, that allow you to forecast and create more transparency internally for yourself. But also, we've sort of stepped away from that rigid configuration of a report dashboard and allow our customers to come up with a lot more flexibility in the design, look and feel of what it is that they want to share internally with their own teams. Another great addition to our sales functionalities is that we finally have a powerful forecasting tool that enables you to leverage the information that is actually stored within your pipeline. A perfect example is what you see on your screen here, that you have the ability to forecast and actually see the change over time in real time as well as things change and fluctuate within the forecast of your sales organizations. You're not only able to see what is being shown at that particular point in time, but also able to see what type of additions, and subtractions have also been made with within the pipeline to give an actual representation of what things are and where your team is at and where the potential gaps are. Another one is that we've also doubled down on the analytics on a user level, being able to distinguish clearly who does what, What is their process on a day-to-day? What makes them successful compared to others? And we've also added the functionality to be able to coach and forecast on an individual level more successfully. Gone are the days where you need to go to an Excel sheet, submit your deals, next steps, and things like that. Now, a sales manager can actually sit down at a table with a colleague and drill down into what their pipeline looks like, what the current status of every deal is, and what the opportunity still is present that would enable them to get to their target or where the business wants them to be. Another great addition is that we've, alongside the increase of functionalities on the marketing side, on the marketing enterprise side, we've given sales users on the Sales Hub enterprise level the ability to leverage more of an account-based strategy. What this means as well is that now with Sales Hub Enterprise, you have the ability to collaborate with marketing functionalities and the marketing team to identify and target accounts that you've clearly deemed as being a fit for an account-based marketing strategy. This means that it increases the collaboration across the different sides of the business, but allows marketing to understand exactly what the priorities are for the sales team and allows them to double down in their efforts on an ongoing basis. Another one which is particularly powerful, which I use every single day, are the advancement in sequences, which are now called advanced sequences. Historically, they were just two channels, the phone line and sending emails, but now we've added a lot more functionalities in terms of coming up with more granular tasks, being able to integrate with your LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and be able to leverage multi-channel outreach more successfully, but also report on what is actually happening on a day-to-day basis to focus on those accounts that really matter to you as a sales user, and in order to generate that pipeline that you really need. And also importantly, and not to be understated, is the inclusion and addition of artificial intelligence on the sales side. When this was announced internally, I think there was a huge sigh of relief on the side of all the HubSpot sales users, where everybody unanimously shouted, finally, we finally have AI on the sales side. This has been something that has been promoted by the marketing team for a long time, but we wanted to make it right and do it right and implement it correctly. What this actually means practically is that you no longer have to manually input data on a contact level. Now, I just want to give you guys a second to understand what that means. It means that if you send an email to a new email contact that you're reaching out to for the first time, and they respond back to you, as long as the HubSpot sales extension is connected to your inbox, HubSpot's sales automation bot will automatically scan and add all relevant information of that individual automatically. Again, automatically to their contact profile. You no longer have to waste minutes of your day inputting the right spelling of their first name, last name, email address, phone number, company name, their associated deals, other crucial details that you want to add. Everything that's in there automatically gets synchronized with your CRM so that you have valuable time back in your day-to-day and make sure that you have all relevant and accurate information. Another one that we've updated with the new features is what we call our Today view. Now, anybody that's been using tasks on a day-to-day basis is familiar with the ability to sort of set up a time frame on a daily basis where you focus on the most valuable tasks. This new functionality, or sort of this increase in functionality, gives you as a sales user more control over what is actually happening and really focuses your approach more specifically on a specific type of activity or what you want to do on that particular day. Tasks used to sort of send you from one side of the platform to another in order to facilitate or maximize the interaction with the contacts or accounts that you've identified. We no longer needed that anymore because we thought that it was too much of a waste of time to send people around and potentially get distracted on a contact level. So now you have the reporting and a clear overview of what you need to do on a day-to-day basis. And the majority of people that have been trying this in beta for the last 4 or 5 months on the sales side have all come back to us and said that this has made their lives easier, but also more productive. So this brings us to more or less the closing aspect of this webinar. And I want to make sure that we spend enough time on this to give you some practical use cases. I've shared with you a bunch of features and you guys are probably thinking, okay, that's really cool, Martijn, but what does this actually mean for me, or how can we actually benefit from this? So I've thought about this, and I've actually come up with 2 examples. The first one is more from the perspective of a sales end user. And I thought this picture really illustrated what modern sales looks like, seeing as the majority of us aren't working in an office space anymore, but working from home, trying to do our daily jobs and activities in combination with 5 or 6 other things that you've got going on at the same time. Now, I want to draw your attention to this next slide. This is the prototypical image or illustration of what I would say 75% of modern sales employees or professionals have to deal with on an ongoing basis. This is Frankenspot. This is that Frankenstein setup that unfortunately the vast majority of sales users have to be confronted with when they go into their office on a day-to-day basis. They get their information from a marketing platform. It could be a Marketo. It could be a SharpSpring in combination with their website that's running on WordPress or Drupal. They've got the Google Analytics that are trying to enrich the data that's generating a list of contacts. They might have a forms platform to identify or track the conversions. And then they're trying to pump it all into an Excel sheet to try and make sense of it all. They've got a Calendly link that allows people to book time with them, but that isn't synchronized to what the contact status is within an Excel sheet. Or if they finally create a deal, they might want to go into Salesforce to try and update that. Or maybe they have a pipe drive if they're a smaller business. And then once they actually have that and they want to reach out to companies, then they're going to use anything from outreach to LinkedIn. They might use a phone that isn't connected to a solution. And then when they finally do move to a closing motion and they actually want to generate a quote, especially in the Netherlands, the vast majority of people use something like Moneybird, like AFAS, like Exact. These are all platforms that force end users and salespeople to go outside of what they're using on a day-to-day basis and try to sync up with other parts of the business because that's just the status quo internally, but nothing is communicating to one another. And in the hopes of trying to make sense of it all, the company makes a sweeping decision and says, you know what, everything is in Pipedrive, everything is in Salesforce, and all the other solutions that we've got, we're going to integrate with a Zapier or Zapier-like tool and hopefully try to make sense of everything. Now you can pretty much understand where I'm going with this whole story. It generates a situation like this for the end user, for the sales user. You're sitting there at your desk, you've got 20 tabs open, each with a different platform, a different solution. You're trying to figure out what it is that you should focus your time and energy on, because on the one hand, you've got that marketer that's sending you messages, hey, we've got all these conversions that we're tracking through Google Analytics, while you're looking at an Excel sheet, holding the phone in your right hand, trying to dial a number that isn't on there yet, while with your left hand, you're trying to scroll from one tab to another to figure out whose LinkedIn profile you should scan Lucia on in order to make sure that you have the right contact details. It's a completely desynchronized experience for the end user, which also leads a lot of salespeople, unfortunately, to get into a position like this after a couple of months. They just don't want to do it anymore. They don't understand what the structure is, and they become completely desensitized to what it is that they should be focusing their time and energy on. So what have we done on the side of HubSpot? Now, as the majority of you here already know, we've centralized a lot of the information. We've tried to make it easier for everybody to get their information within a singular platform in a singular dashboard. You want to know what this contact did on the marketing side or what they're doing on the sales side? We've got that beautiful historical timeline, now upgraded and even more powerful than it has been before. You want to engage with them? You don't have to leave their profile. It's all synced up within one platform. You can email, call, create a task, even organize a meeting directly from their contact record. You want to know if there has been communication in the past of what they've done or even track a deal and forecast it? Fine. We've given that too to our end users, and it allows you to centralize that information, not just for yourself as a sales user, but also for the other people that are working on the management side to be able to see accurately what's happening. And if there's anything else that you need on top of that, because of HubSpot's ecosystem, you could add endless amounts of integrations within our platform that are either natively constructed or based off of a HubSpot-based coding platform that enables you to centralize as much information as you can within a singular dashboard and give you a singular, consistent experience. Ultimately, this is what we're trying to get to. HubSpot started out as the inbound marketing company, but we've realized over the last couple of years that that's the old way of looking at things, because ultimately from that perspective, marketing is trying to pump information into the CRM, and there wasn't really a bunch of communication taking place. What we've decided to move to is more towards a CRM powered marketing strategy, meaning that the data that you're leveraging and using is potentially added from marketing initially, but sales being on the front lines has a lot of context that they could use to enrich that information. And only by combining that context and combining the functionalities within a platform that seamlessly allows the end user to transition from one side of the business to the other, are you able to then structure and build a coherent strategy that fits not just one team, but all teams that make use of our platform. So let's move to the second example, and this one more specifically from the side of a sales manager, the people that you ultimately as a sales user need to report into and make sure that they are aware of what's going on in your day-to-day. So what does it look like for them? Well, their lives might be a lot simpler from a technical perspective, but those are people that are usually stuck in meetings every day, that are doing coaching sessions, one-to-ones, that have to report to their superiors, and that have to make sure that they're on top of everything that's happening within their teams. But if their end users aren't using a singular platform, they can't track the information accurately. So most of the time, they force their end users or their teams into adopting either a singular Excel document, sometimes something like Salesforce, a pipe drive, which only has a limited view of what's actually taking place. And in order to report on it all, they use a business analytics tool like a Power BI or a Looker, which is pulling information from a different platform without any additional supporting context that could screw things up. And I've even been shocked by the amount of companies that I've spoken to over the last year that still use the old-fashioned pen and paper forecasting technique of just handing a piece of paper to their manager with the name of the deal and saying, yeah, I think it's roughly about this much, and this is what I'm calling for this year. Now that's almost unfathomable when you think about the size of companies that are still using this technique. But the reason, simply put, again, is that most people aren't aware of the potential available to them. That's why we've doubled down on growing and expanding our platform to make it not just user-friendly, but powerful for the end users. Ultimately, you see a lot of managers on the sales side that are walking around looking like this. They're literally screaming at the screen because their sales teams aren't communicating the right information to them. And the best way to describe this is something that I actually heard from my own sales manager a year or two ago when I started out as a sales exec at HubSpot. He literally told me being a sales manager in a larger sales organization is like herding cats. Now, what he means by that is you could sit them all together, tell them what to do, but none of them are going to listen to you. Everyone's got their own mind. They're all going to walk around and do whatever they feel like, and they're impossible to get to face the same way and do what they're supposed to do according to the rules because they think they know better, much like cats. And if there's any cat people, you guys probably know what I mean by that. So again, what have we done to make this easier for the sales managers? Well, we've increased the visibility in the pipelines, not just from a sales enterprise level, but also a sales professional level. So you can see that fluctuation as a sales manager, anticipate where those gaps are going to be coming from, and that enables you to have more effective and more efficient coaching sessions with those end users that you're supposed to be guiding and coaching along the way. Again, we've provided you with more analytics that allows you to dive deeper into what success looks like, not just in general, but for that particular person, and allow you to accurately track over time as things change and evolve, whether or not they need to adapt or apply a new strategy. And that ultimately brings us to more or less the concluding question of this webinar. And this is something that was also raised to us by our own sales leadership that we would be able to ask critically during our conversations. Ultimately, if you can and you know how to scale your sales team with great and easy tooling, why don't you? Thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you, Martijn. Can you go one slide back? Because that is actually, of course, the question. If this is not the moment when will be the moment, right? I mean, why shouldn't you do this if you want to know how to scale your sales team with great and easy tooling? In the chat pane, I want to ask everybody, rate your own sales process from 1 to 5. 5, if you think I am 100% happy with my tool set, I know how to scale it, and we're going through the roof. And 1, if you see any changes or anything that you say like, okay, this is so far away from us, we need to start today. 2.5, 2.8. Okay, makes it easier. 4, 4. Huang saying 4, nice. Honestly, my 2.5 would be a 4 if it wasn't for HubSpot limitations. Okay, that's maybe interesting. We have some time left, so Martijn, maybe it's a good idea to put Omar off mute. Omar, if you would be open for that, because this is something which is really interesting what you were saying here. You say, honestly, my 2.5 would be a 4 if it wasn't for HubSpot limitations. Let me unmute you. Hi, nice to meet you, Omar. Thank you for joining today. I hope you don't mind that I put you on this spot for now. But yeah, you were mentioning something pretty interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've joined my current company a few months ago, and I have been working mainly on optimizing our CRM, HubSpot. I've been facing a lot of issues and limitations with it. Coming from a background where I used to use Salesforce, so I'm more used to having custom fields or fields communicate with one another between companies, contacts, opportunities. I'm able to make steps mandatory, not just on deals, but also on accounts and contacts. And I think there's just so much that HubSpot still doesn't offer, even when it comes to forecasting. I've had access to these beta tools, I think from a month ago, the sales analytics and the forecasting. And when it comes to forecasting, it's a simple of best case, worst case, and median option, but we don't really affiliate conversion rates per stage or historic, let's say, close ones for each rep. So it's a very simple. I'd say when you mentioned that forecasting is unfathomable on Salesforce, that it's done automatically, by pen and paper. I don't think that's the case, right? Because I've used Salesforce, and usually it's a very cheap add-on that can offer me 10 times the complexity that HubSpot forecasting or quota attainment, just progress has to offer. And even though I am using these beta modes, I'm still relying on external sources for reporting, for forecasting, and for all of these things. So forgive me for being too outspoken here. I think this is an issue. I spoke with the two developers that have done the forecasting tool and the analytics tool, and I've spoken to our account manager and a bunch of people, and I think your team is aware of these issues, so there's no denying that these issues do exist. And I think it's just taking baby steps to the right path. So it's going to take time to get there, I think, but just the lack of flexibility in the CRM itself is a nuisance to my job. So yeah,
First of all, thank you for being so honest, Omar. That we really appreciate that. Martijn, do you hear this more often? Are you aware of these challenges?
Yeah, and I completely recognize what you're saying as well, Omar. It's something that has been flagged actually from day one when we rolled out our sales functionalities a couple of years ago. And you also write in your analysis that HubSpot is taking baby steps at this stage still in order to get to that level. The one key word that you use though is that for the reporting or the forecasting that you want to do in Salesforce, you have to get an add-on. That's actually exactly the opposite of the logic that HubSpot is applying, where most other companies would sort of force you into using an additional service or having to acquire a different company in order to leverage or do that particular process. HubSpot's logic has always been, we'll just handcraft and build it natively as part of our solution. So even though we're fairly slow with the rollout of certain functionalities, our aim is always to sort of maintain that ease of use in order to get to that level. HubSpot long enough to see the evolution of our sales tooling, I can honestly tell you that even though there are some, definitely, and honestly as well, there are some aspects of the solution that are still lacking, we've made some pretty big investments over the last 2 years to try and get our sales platform to where it should be. And the way it is now is definitely not an end state. So it's also with your engagement with the guys on our side that are making this and your constant feedback that we really decide to improve and evolve this. Because if it wasn't for guys like you, we wouldn't be where we are now. So it's good to keep that communication and the channel open to make sure that we keep evolving and growing in that department.
Thanks for that, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Omar, for being so honest. Martijn, if somebody fills in a 2, they're not that happy, what would you advise on the first steps of optimization? Because if you want to grow, you want to optimize, it always starts with small steps. What can they do from 11 o'clock after this webinar? How could they start?
Yeah, so you usually fall into 1 or 2 categories in my experience. The first one is somebody that isn't using HubSpot yet. The great thing is we've got the free CRM. You can sign up for it. You have a lot of tools that you can use to synchronize it with your inbox, your calling, different solutions that you have, and it gives you sort of a non-committed solution or platform that you can try out, and then you can give your honest opinion on and say, okay, this works for me, this doesn't. The other situation is that there are actually quite a few sales users that joined the company after the decision had already been made to implement or make use of HubSpot as a CRM. Now, this isn't just true for HubSpot. This is true for any platform, any CRM. It's sort of the nth user dilemma, as they call it. And what that simply means is that the people that are supposed to be using the solution now never went through the onboarding and the training necessary in order to adopt or apply those functionalities properly. Now, my recommendation would be to implement at least the very basics. So things like making sure that there's a proper connection to your website. I know the majority of people here probably have done this, but it still surprises me how many HubSpot users don't have this properly. There's the connection to your inbox. So with the HubSpot sales extension, that's a huge functionality that is almost overlooked all the time by end users because nobody ever told them to do this. The adoption of functionalities like being able to send out meetings links, templates, sequences, the behavior almost to create tasks on companies or contact records so that you can focus back on them at a time that you've allocated for a specific type of activity. These are all aspects of being a good or powerful HubSpot user that are very easily overlooked because a lot of people assume that, oh, I've gotten a HubSpot user login, which means that my sales experience is going to be easier and more productive than it has ever been, when they overlook the fact that they also need to change the way that they work and also their behavior when they're going about their sales activities. So just to round this off, if you have access to a HubSpot CSM, then my recommendation would be really leverage that person. Make sure that they either give you a good sort of onboarding packet or template with sort of a step-by-step process on how to onboard those new people that have started to use the platform since it's been implemented. And if that isn't sufficient for you, there's people like me on the sales side who are also product specialists that can also get involved to re-demo the solution or re-demo the platform and actually show you how we use it on a day-to-day basis. Because a lot of the times, there's a lot of very basic aspects to using HubSpot that get forgotten and aren't shared internally on your side that you could benefit from in the long run.
All right, that makes sense. So if you're already a HubSpot user, try to get all these sources. The CSM is your customer success manager. There is also a partner structure where people use the tool a lot, for example, at webs. And we will share, of course, these insights, but also the possibility to connect with those people after this webinar in order to get you up and running. If you want to start use HubSpot, if you want to discover it for your organization, feel free to reach out to us as well. We can help you guiding in that process as well. All right, there were no more questions coming in the chat, Martijn. So this episode ends 10 minutes earlier. I would like to thank you so much for your enthusiasm and your best practices on the HubSpot sales hub functionalities. Yeah, no more questions coming in. I think we just wrap it up, right?
Perfect. No, thanks
We
for
had a
having
good
me.
morning. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
so
guys.
much, and we talk to each other later. Thank you for
Of course.
joining. See each other next episode.
See you. Bye.
Bye.